So it's been kind of hard on that side. And you also had a time period of, remember that quietly quitting?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the people were like, oh, you know, my boss doesn't know this. I'm not going to do any more than is exactly in my preview. And they basically are not going to do anything outside of their existing job description and to move up. And, you know, I think that world is kind of like slashed, you know, where there needs to be, you know, a better relationship between an employer and employee.
All right. Welcome back to Expandable.
How's it going?
Good. I had this thought like earlier in the week. I was like, you know, I wonder what, if you could just kind of pencil them out, what are the main drivers of the commercial market? And I don't know why that thought came to me. It just came in my brain. And I'm like, I'm a big picture thinker. I like to look at things from the top down and then, you know, drive impact through to execution. And so when I get these ideas, I'm like, you know, it'd be really interesting to know, you know, what are the common things that small businesses should be aware of, that we are aware of.
Okay. My first question is, when you think of commercial, what is that? In the banking world, commercials, everything, you know, that is unrelated to their primary, you know, not borrowing for the primary house.
Correct. Yeah.
Primary car.
Yeah.
Personal credit cards.
Yep.
You know, but if it's any loan, can be to buy a residential, but for the income purposes. So for me, it's commercials, everything from income to produce.
Okay.
Income,
well, so
income driving.
Your definition is going to bleed between, it's going to be a mixture of both of mine.
Okay.
My definition is the business to business market, meaning we are a business that operates to serve other businesses. And then there's the consumer market, which is a business that seeks to serve consumers. So of course, we're not talking about individuals doing something, their own investments, we're talking about businesses, but in your world, it's going to bleed between B2B and B2C. Yep. So let's focus on the businesses who are selling to other businesses in terms for this discussion.
Got it.
Again, then our next episode, we'll look at the other side of it. But I, you know, all of us, we have these things in the back of our mind. We're always thinking about, because you see stuff like, okay, someone's getting elected. There's interest rate that's about to change. There's new policies that's been put in place, regulation locally. There's all of these things. Like they sort of get like thrown at you, and that's when you're thinking of them. But I thought it would be cool to just sort of look at a list of common drivers that are always there, always part of what drives the market, what's driving your business, and just discuss a couple of them. So I think off the top of it is consumer demand. It's demand for your product or service. Obviously, that's a very obvious one. So you need to know, you know, is there demand? And I won't say the business, because I know people that own this business, and I don't want to, you know, speak bad on their business. But there are certain businesses and there are certain industries that I believe shouldn't exist.
Yeah, there's many that I believe the same. Yes.
And it's like they just throw good money after bad, and lenders will come along and lend where there's like a little bit of interest, but there's not demand. And those are the ones where I think if you have to really be able to
I think solar comes to mind. Every solar company is going bankrupt. So I mean, like,
that's a good one. Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I think that business is very difficult it's hard for me to get my mind around how that works, because I don't see the consumer demand. You know, I don't see people saying, hey, can you come out and do this today? Like I've been really wanting to do this. It's more of the other side of, you know, a lot of education, and look, people are doing it. Don't you want to do it?
Yeah. And I feel it's forcing it down your throat that you know, yeah, of course I've seen it. Have you had them come out to your home and give you the spill?
Like every third day I have someone,
you know, and they go through it and they prove, this is what we're going to make. But over time, you know, their models that they're producing and everything, where's the validity in it? Where's accuracy? Everybody that I know that have gotten it, you know, they don't really look, but they feel like, oh yeah, my power bill's low. I'm this. But there's a flaw they wear out. They're not as good for the environment as people think. There's a lot of holes. And then the amount of cost. Yeah. So as soon as you got the, you know, the write-offs in your taxes and you at the education, well, all that did was then increase the sales cost. So the sales commissions eat up so much of it.
Yeah, that's a good.
And the finance behind it.
That's a good point.
You know, between the whole industry, I think, you know, is some of the players,
here's what I say about solar. I think that I think that the market for solar is much smaller than it is trying to be. I think the market really is companies that can actually utilize solar energy to power things that they're doing that it's part of their economy of what they're doing in their business. And there's a tax advantage for them. So there's a double hit for a return, and that it's helping them on the back end. But when you look at the residential market, it starts to make a lot less sense to me I don't see the demand that's there. And when you see tax incentives to the residential market, to me, that's a red flag of like, hey, we're trying to make this thing work, and it's not working.
It didn't work. And of
like,
course,
I'd love to see the uptake on those tax incentives on the back end of like, how many people are actually excited about that? And that's why they did it. I tend to believe it's a lot lower.
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, I'm going to give my stuff to Goodwill, and then you get your ticket to give you don't give yourself to the Goodwill to get tax, but it's part of the deal, but it's not the reason you do it.
Correct.
Okay. So consumer demand, that's one. If you're, I think you have to, if you're in a business that's like, people are not calling you, to say, hey, I want to learn about your stuff, there's probably not a lot of demand. But if you're in one, then that's good. Supply chain and production cost. I think, importing from other overseas, making sure you have parts to repair things, to replace things, to create what you're.
Well, I think in that you need to just build in as much redundancy as possible too, because you got to play that game. What if I lose my overseas supplier? Then what?
Yeah, right.
Go ahead and run through that scenario now. Is there anywhere local I can do it?
Yep.
Can I buy this? Well, what are my margins?
Right,
and run through the scenarios.
Yeah. We've talked about that a little bit on past episodes. That's just such a huge one. Making sure you have options. Production cost, of course. Okay. Technological innovation. I think this kind of goes back to reducing costs. There's some businesses that I've looked at recently, and they've been able to really do this well, where the investment in the innovative tech has allowed them to dramatically scale back their costs, which allowed them to price their service or product better than someone else in the market who's not taking advantage of automation, let's say, for example. And so they win, and they start to bring in more business whenever those new clients come in, see that, look, I can get this done cheaper and it's done at the same quality. Actually, you're going to win in the market. Yeah. So looking for ways that you can innovate, and it doesn't have to be some kind of like off the wall, crazy AI.
So many little things you can do.
Yeah. I mean, AI is good for a lot of applications, but it doesn't even have to be AI. It could be like old school tech. And that's how I think of automation. Like,
I mean, it's funny. I mean, there's been times in the banking world when you see stuff and we say, "Oh, here's the software," and you're like, "Implementation, $100,000 and this," and I'm like,
"For what?"
Yeah, and I'm like, "So what do we got to do in house? We got to do this." Oh, it's 5 minutes a day. Yeah. We're going to do it old school. Take that paper and put it here. Done.
Yeah. You're like, we can do this on Google Sheets.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've done on some things. It's CRM technology. And sell hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
One was $250,000 for me to know.
Oh, easily, yeah.
What my lenders had in their pipeline. Mm-hmm. It's like,
no, thank you.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Government policies and regulation. Now, this is one you're close to. Tax policies, trade tariffs, environmental regulations, labor laws, all kinds of factors. Again, these are things that come up when they come up, and it's like people are talking about them, or hitting you hard in your pocket. Oh yeah, whenever there's new regulation, it just spurs a whole nother, typically useless industry on top of that, of consultants and everything and. Yeah. I think this is a good one where if you have a good, and I have yet to really find a good one, honestly, I think it's more of a myth, but in theory, a good tax strategist, someone who understands policy and regulation, and especially in terms of taxes, that's where that person can make these things more practical and realistic in your business and actually have impact where you don't have to think about them as much. But again, it's, to me, I don't even know if that person exists. That's a rabbit hole we could go down. Global economic trends. Now, this is one that's harder to get your hands around, I think, unless you are in a business that is exporting or importing or, operating globally to sell. And some small businesses are by nature of what they do, but I think most are not. International trade and foreign investment, exchange rates. I know you're close to this, to some of the things that you do. I think that kind of comes back to, like, I know we talked about this, some of the vendors, like, you can get hit with what they call economical rents. Like you got to pass through 3 gates and you got to pay 3 times with a certain software or a certain, platform. Or you could just, and it's sort of similar to what we were saying before, or you could just go to this lesser known, still highly compliant and safe avenue for currency exchange rates and all the things, and pay one time, and you just mitigated 2 more risk, and you've reduced your cost by twofold. And by my estimation, that's growth inside the P&L. Like that's growth like down.
Oh
the
yeah,
P&L.
that's usually top end.
Yeah. So, if you're in a business that is driven heavily by global economic trends, then that's probably one that you're already dialed into anyways. If you're dealing with commodities or something that you're importing from a different place. All right, next one, interest rates and monetary policy.
Yeah, I mean that does affect a lot of commercial. More so, yeah. I've seen this year. In every election year, you always people, I'm going to wait to election, and life goes on, and and your investors are still going to invest. You're still going to have commercial. Everything's still going to move on. Mm-hmm. Maybe not in the fashion that you wish it had gone to, but things do. But this election more so, I've seen more of a slowdown than I've ever had in my 20 years, mm-hmm. for sure. Of people are just wanting to wait, and a lot of projects are on hold to like March of next year. Yeah. That they're going to start then regardless, but they figure, okay, people are going to be done being distracted enough that maybe will come in or.
Well, I did have a conversation with a consultant who's in the construction business, and he said that he has a couple clients right now that are literally, they have jobs booked that are coming up, but they're pushing them off, by not saying to their client, hey, we're not going to do this job until this date, but they're adding steps to sort of push the project by about 2 or 3 weeks because they're waiting to see what that new interest rate comes out. Because the trajectory, not trajectory, but the difference in what they're going to finance to do that project for themselves mm-hmm. internally is going to change dramatically.
Well, half a point makes a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in those micro instances, it makes sense, but I think
we're so close away.
In the macro,
you've got a couple things. Yes, you've got mm-hmm. the Feds have forecasted, and the economists are predicting a high probability of a rate drop in September, and they're even thinking as much 50 to 100 basis points. So that's a huge drop. Yeah. And yes, you would wait for that.
Yeah, and if you can wait 2-3 weeks, that makes sense. But by and large, just mm-hmm. run your business. Right.
Well, it's the timing too. When you start the construction, you don't want to stop.
Yes.
You want to move on through. That's the risk period. Yep. So you start in a lower rate environment. It's a better position too, because
Yep. All right. Another one, inflation and pricing power. The ones that come to mind are kind of supply chain driven, like businesses that are, close. They're not serving the end user, like a retail user, but they are serving the businesses who serve those end users, and those prices, the inflation just, sort of has a ripple effect. I think inflation is a real thing right now. I mean, some people are like, we're already in hyperinflation, which I don't believe we're in hyperinflation, but by definition. But inflation plays a big part of it, and that's one that I don't really know, if there's anything that you can do on the regular to mitigate, because it's just going to happen.
No,
other than just being more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general the only way to kind of counter inflation is inflation continues on, especially when people are stressed and have less money and then are in demand. And so, yeah, if everybody actually was efficient to begin with, inflation wouldn't get to the level that it does.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And a lot of these things play on one another. They're not in silos. Obviously, you have inflation, you're going to have issues with the demand.
No, all of them are different levers, and some will, are stronger levers to pull than others.
Yep. A couple more here. Employment and wages. Wage growth is typically tied to consumer spending, which in turn drives commercial market. Any thoughts on that?
I noticed in the past few years, especially in the banking world, you didn't have people that wanted to get into banking. They wanted to get into fintech, which always boggles my mind because fintechs can't exist without a bank.
Yeah.
That fintech related banking products, they are beholden to the bank.
Right.
So you want to know, so it's been kind of hard on that side. And you also had a time period of, remember that quietly quitting? The people were like, oh, my boss doesn't know this. I'm not going to do any more than is exactly in my preview. And so they basically are not going to do anything outside of their existing job description and to move up. And, I think that world is kind of like slashed, where there needs to be, a better relationship between an employer and employee. Like it just really, they both need to value each other because it is running a company. It's getting harder every year to start a company and to maintain a company because really every country is pushing small businesses down every opportunity they can by creating. So,
100%. Okay. The next one is competition. I think competition in large part is good.
It's good.
If you're in a real noisy market, that might be the opposite of the demand conversation we had.
And competition is great when there's definitely oversight, when people are playing by the rules. When you've got that unfair competition, it's blatant and nobody's coming in and do anything about it.
Yeah. Well,
that happens in so many of the industries. And then
what
concerns good people rotten.
Well, I was about to say, what I see is people get lazy. Demographics and population growth. This is a key driver, I think. We had a lot of big migration here in our country. People moving in droves from one state to another, which I think is kind of starting to die down. But we're here in Florida. Like, people are still moving here. People are always going to be moving here. But population growth drives a lot of these factors. It drives regulation. It drives demand. It drives, employment, unemployment. It drives all of these things. So that is a pretty key element, especially when you are serving companies who are serving the residents. That whole market that makes up building homes, managing homes, all of that. So in your area, is the population growing or declining? That's one to really like.
Well, I think everywhere in America is growing. Even the states that people are moving more from, you still have a lot of people, immigrants going to those states and then, growth. So they're really not necessarily losing population number-wise, but others are just gaining faster up on them.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
I'll botch this, but I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was Peter Thiel talking about basically the economics of California still work. So that's why there's still
because the amount of volume that comes in,
total volume, but then the amount of taxes that are paid.
Yes.
Even though you have some big players that have left, it would take a couple of the major players leaving for it to really impact their so even though they're imploding, their everything else, the taxes, the money, the revenue is still coming in.
Yeah.
So they're still able to,
it's just kind of
blowing themselves up.
It's that, celebrity that is able to live lavish and party hard and money just keeps coming in until it stops.
Yes.
It will stop for them at some point.
Until they OD on the drugs they were.
I think I think Hollywood is gonna not make the revenue that it did at some point. It's gonna be It's gonna be broken up. You know, YouTube's taking a larger share. Somebody, you know, I don't know about you, but you know, the movies have sucked the last few years. They've gotten horrible.
I don't ever watch movies.
Regurgitation of.
I just watch all the
crap.
old stuff if I watch anything.
So I mean, their revenue is going to decline.
Yeah,
but I agree. In the short term, it's because of that. But at their rate, the way they're pissing it away, it'll be gone.
Yeah, a couple more here: environmental and social factors, and then investor sentiment and financial markets.
To me, that's the most annoying one because that's like we're going to create, you know, a metric for a company that doesn't exist and give a perceived value to it.
You're talking about the financial market,
or just like startups and you know how they're pushing, you know.
Inflated.
Even in funds, I was looking at. Do you want to invest in the companies that you know are DEI focused?
Yeah, a DEI ETF.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, all right, well, can I just short sell that one? You know,
yeah,
so.
Yeah.
All these are market drivers. A lot of them, I think, are.
I think
that aren't real, but they do drive the markets that are hollow.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the sentiments. You know, it's proof is in the pudding, but the sentiment drives the early before there's ever proof of concept.
Yep. I think the major ones are being honest with yourself, like having a little bit of self-awareness about demand. Because sometimes you can sell yourself to say, oh, this is always going to be the way it is if it's good, or it's going to pick up when it's not. That's a tough one, actually. If your business is going down and demand's going down, you need to be thinking about a new path. Technological innovation can be hard for some operators because they're good at executing but not looking ahead. Obviously, policies, global economic trends, interest rates, and monetary policy. These are all things that are kind of out of your control, but you can control the culture you're building. You control the price of your product. You control, efficiencies, employment and wages, demographic population shifts. A lot of these are external, but what you can control is how you're building what you're taking to market. So it's good. I think it's good to just have these in the back of your mind sometimes more in the front of your mind, and bringing people around you that are of like mind, that look at your business like you look at it, or like you should look at it.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. We're going to move on to the next one where we're going to talk about the consumer market, B2C. So join us there.